Hello everyone, I am Gil Mathew, and this is Talking With, a program where we dive into some stories you might not have heard of before. And today I am privileged to have a wonderful guest with me, Mr. Beryl Robinson, a longtime native of Nevada City. Welcome, Beryl.
Hi, Gil. How are you today? This great day.
I am doing fabulous.
So
Wonderful fall weather. So, Beryl, you and I have talked a little bit about the freeway. All of us have traveled that freeway, and I bet most of us don't know the story of that. What do you know of that freeway story?
Well, the freeway was an early part of my life in the sense that I graduated in the first graduating class of Nevada Union High School in 1953. And that date becomes important slightly in talk about the freeway. So I graduated in the Veterans Memorial Building in Grass Valley. The two high schools had come together through a vote of the people, and that's where we graduated because the bond issue had been approved, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not that old to be worrying about such things as a freeway, but my parents had a service station in Nevada City that they had built in February 1935. It happened to be Richfield Service Station, and when they built it, they were quite broke. And so we would learn through time and quickly thereafter that the state of California was thinking of building a freeway. They were more than thinking. They had it planned between Nevada City and Grass Valley. The mine's an important integral part of the economy of Nevada County, and I might a lot of things to say at this to set the scene. Nevada County had about 30,000 plus people in it. That would include Truckee. So small by today's standards, though we're not that much bigger. We're at 100,000. We both have just learned we're at 104,000 or something. I would go to Sierra College my first 2 years. At that time, it was at Auburn, and they ran a bus from here. Joe Griggs Sr., who was the driver of the bus, and I rode the bus for 2 years, and it was on the campus where Placer High is, and today is part of Placer High. Graduate from there, and by that time, we're graduating now in 55, and the mines are closing. They all closed at the same time. That would be the Empire, the North Star, and the Idaho. My dad has, because he served in the Second World War, occupation troops in Japan, and he has come home, and the business has become quite successful, and he is ultimately becomes a Richfield agent in Grass Valley, buying out Frank Hooper, and the location of the bulk plants that they had in those days for the smaller stations with smaller tanks, was on South Auburn Street near Whiting Street. But he still maintained and he leased it out to service station to various renters that would run it and and they had a gallonage thing and how they worked out the rent. When I graduated from Berkeley, I have 5 semesters, 4 at Sierra and 1 at Berkeley in engineering. Fortunately, my 5th semester and first at Berkeley, I also took some business courses. I would get B's in those, and I'd see my first D in engineering. So I would end up with a pretty good, and unbeknown to me, education. I graduated from the School of Business Administration, and with a major change at Berkeley, I lost no time, which was amazing. So I was in college. I come out, and we're talking about 1957. Now my parents had thought, and most people had thought, they didn't in their minds, I don't know many people, that how wide a swath it would do in both towns. But we're talking about Nevada City, and it would be built in 2 sections. And my parents have seen that, etc. And the gentleman that was leasing the service station in Nevada City that was built, my parents had maintained ownership, He wanted out. He was kind of not doing well, and he had some health, whatever his issues were. And he had told my dad, "I really want out of here. Get somebody else to run this place." And I was, with due respect, not many business people or business administration people, and I did look around in the Bay Area. I really didn't want to leave the area, and et cetera. And he says, "Why don't you run the station? You know, the freeway's coming, and we're not sure how much, but we think it's going. The station's going to go, and you'll be here a year or two, and they'll have the freeway built. So you'll have a couple years of business under your belt of running your own business, and therefore you'll have an easier time getting a job." That would be October 1 of 1957 that I would start that station. And it was a good business. They had an excellent business. Local people traded there. There were other stations down in the Plaza area, a Standard station and a Shell station, and they did well also. A lot of local. And think about it, the road that we see, the old road today, it is a good thing that we have a freeway, certainly by today's standards. But at any rate, at that time, there wasn't that much traffic, and some people were scratching their heads as to why we needed a freeway. And as Nevada City started seeing how big a swath that was going to take out in Nevada City, there was resistance by a lot of people, and probably more so in Nevada City than in Grass Valley. But we're in 57 that I'm indicating and thinking a couple years. Just to fast forward for a second, I will still be in that business until Labor Day of 1964. So I'd be there 7 years. We had an excellent business. Got involved, and the other gentleman who had left had just got involved with the U-Haul Trailer Company, how they opened businesses, U-Haul, and their headquarters at the time was in Portland. And I would quickly find that was a vibrant business, U-Haul, and it was a growing business. And I become very involved with U-Haul in addition to the service station. U-Haul dealers were rated as A dealers, AA dealers, or AAA. Communities the size of Nevada City never had AAA dealers. I will become a AAA dealer. How did I do that? I did an excellent job of selling rental trailers, so that's selling a contract for somebody moving. And if I got you on the phone, you would end up probably coming and getting the trailer for me. I just had a knack for that. So I did a lot of business with U-Haul, and we were investing in U-Haul. You could buy directly U-Haul trailers, and I did a lot of that, and that's how I got to be a AAA dealer. And with that said, the business was flourishing between the U-Haul being a native of Nevada City, etc. The controversy in Nevada City is growing against the freeway. The mines shutting down have an economic impact, clearly, because even in the closing days of the mines, many people were working in the timber industry in the summer, early fall, and then they would work at the mines in the winter. And therefore, they had year-round economy. With the mines shut down, that was disappearing, and people were actually leaving here, young people, because there wasn't enough work. So we had this one group who said, okay, this will bring a lot of money in, a lot of money to be spent, and this will give us a stimulus in both communities. Nevada City didn't exactly think that. I will become, how I did is immaterial to this conversation, but I will make a decision to run for the City Council of Nevada City while I'm still running the business. And I run for the council, and at that time the city was still doing its council elections internally by the city in the City Hall of Nevada City. And I will be elected in April of 1964. 1964, to the City Council of Nevada City. With that said, prior, going back about a year, a little over a year, the city engaged with the state freeway to do the relocation of the utilities, water and sewer. They thought they could make some money into this process. The city thought that. And the city is a very small organization as far as personnel, etc. My parents had by this time received their first amount of money that the state was willing to pay them. It was pretty poor. Because what had happened is everybody now knows where the off-ramps are of the ultimate completed freeway, 2 sections, the first one being Nevada City to Glenbrook, then from Glenbrook out on highway going towards Auburn. And therefore, any relocation of the business my parents had, you found that those off-ramps and immediate adjacent to those ramps where there could build businesses, the prices of lots skyrocketed. And they could get the money for them because they were good locations, and that's typical of a freeway. The laws were quite different in those days. We're talking about a totally different time frame. I was talking about the 50s and 60s. In the state, they're going to build it, and that was their attitude. And they kind of thought that people should, because I have become on the council, I'm contacted by the appraiser who was contacting and getting properties. They'd bought a lot by this time that I was on the council, they had bought a lot of properties of the right-of-way they needed in both communities, and in particular on the Nevada City side. The way the freeway came in to Nevada City, the area were adjacent to today's Robinson Enterprises. There was no houses that were torn down, and the Caltrans, up until they got to Sacramento Street, where the business was, Angelini Brothers had a repair business on the other side. The mortuary was where the big sequoia tree was, and it was going down in the freeway. So that was causing a controversy. And so Paul Bergman, who had the mortuary, and the old train depot was there, etc. But as it moved on down towards Broad Street, it was a pretty wide swath. A number of things would happen as they tried to sell the freeway to the people of Nevada City. Again, some people, they had deteriorated buildings. They hadn't maintained their buildings. The economy is not good. So some people had agreed and already had sold their property for whatever the offer was. But I was, and so I had this additional little bit of personal thing. As a council member, and because of the business being in the way of the freeway, I was appointed to work with a state local engineer to facilitate the relationship on the water and sewer lines, because the city had some problems in billing, etc. So I got to know those people. Additionally, I would be contacted by the appraiser of the state of California. It's my parents' business. I don't own it. The structure and property. At any rate, and he told me, you need to talk to your mother and father because we're going to build the freeway and we're going to take this land. And he also told me, and I always remember this, he made this one sentence was, it's his patriotic duty to sell the property. And I didn't really think it was his patriotic duty. I thought there was some money involved and that they had every right. And they'd hired an attorney by now, Bill Weatherall, who was the city attorney. But however, they contacted Bill. And there had been a couple exchanges of letters, and the state had agreed to a slight bump up in what they were offering. Again, nothing compared to just buying a lot on an off-ramp. And I told the appraiser, I said, are you appraising based on the volume of business and how healthy this business is? because you're mentioning to me other properties, and I know you've bought them. Everybody's talking to everybody. Oh, I see now Joe has sold, or Sally, or whoever. Somebody has sold, and oh dear. And everybody knew everybody's business because everybody knew everybody. Not 100% perhaps, but people knew. And I'm on the council. Somebody must have voted for me. I got the highest vote Nevada City ever got. That's immaterial, but anyway, I had. Some of the issues that would be with the freeway building is the people made it very clear they didn't want to see the thing. And that's why you find as it passes into Nevada City on Sacramento Street, it dips down under, and it goes under Broad Street. And they agreed to trench it. They said you won't see it looking down Broad Street from the City Hall. That became a selling point that the state, and we're going to put in these big bins where we're going to plant trees, and it's going to be the most beautiful freeway in California. We're going to put planters all over the place, and we're going to make you people so happy. You'll just be so happy to have us around. So those are some of the issues. Then another issue will pop up in the attempt to build the freeway is that the assay office building had to go down in order to build it. Why did it have to go down? Because there were 2 off-ramps proposed coming from Reno or Truckee into Nevada City. One off-ramp is very typical of the one and only that exists today. The second one would come through where the post office is and line up on Union Street is the second off-ramp. In that process, in order to get the width for the off-ramp, oughts had to go. That started a big storm. In the meantime, there was so much. The city is starting as a community. City Hall is probably, and I'm on the council, there was, what do we do? You got people very upset. You got other people who sold. They probably, by the time I'm thinking about, they're probably 60, 70% of the right-of-way has been purchased on the Nevada City side, maybe 80. So in order to two of the leading citizens at that time, there were several, fortunately, leading citizens of Nevada City at that time that were very concerned about the health of Nevada City. Its health was not good, its economic health. And that was Bob Payne and Dick Nee. Dick Nee had an electric business, electric appliances, etc., in a building that was immediately adjacent to the Nevada Theater, and it has since been torn down and led to the ultimate of the city making the historic district. Because of it being torn down, and a couple others that triggered all of that. At any rate, he had his business there. And the issue that was brewing was the state had an alternate plan for Nevada City, and they decided between Bob and Dick as kind of leaders. Dick Nee was for bringing the freeway on the state route, as I'm sort of describing it as you see it today. His feelings were that any alternate route going around Nevada City would kill the town economically. Who would bother to come to Nevada City? And we're again talking about 1965, 64 years. So they hold a vote, not in the city hall, but you could kind of call it a straw vote. And where it was located, and it was a one-day vote, and there wasn't ballots sent out, there was notices in the paper and et cetera about it taking place. And it occurred underneath today's Oddfellows building, and on the left-hand side was vacant at that time. The other side was a drugstore. There were 2 drugstores at that time on Broad Street, Dickerman's and the Rexall drugstore. And the vote was held, and the question on the ballot was, should vote for the route through the town or the route around town? Now, the route around town, which isn't really under probably, you talk about it, but as the freeway came down and got to the Gold Flat overcrossing of today, The freeway was, instead of kind of going on down the hill and drifting as Sacramento Street off-ramp, drifting over and going under proposed Broad Street, it would drift just the opposite direction towards Pioneer Park. And therefore, it was going to take out more residential housing than the proposed route. And the proposed route took out very few. It did take houses out, but very few. And it would then swing to the left as it touched Pioneer Park, swinging to the left and heading for Nevada Street at the top elevation where you get to the top of Nevada Street. And it would take out some of the 2 or 3 elegant homes up there as it tied in, because the freeway between the two towns is 2 state highways, Highway 20 and 49. 49 heading for Donnyville north, and 20 heading on to Truckee and east of Reno, etc. And so the ballot didn't have a third question, do you like the freeway or no freeway? It's not on the ballot. The vote was overwhelming. Bob Payne was supporting the idea of going around town. I have to say that from my personal standpoint, and I'm getting sort of involved with the city politically, that I didn't think we should go that route. I kind of thought they ought to not have it so dang wide. But that was just kind of how I felt. And I won't say how I probably voted, but, at any rate, the vote was overwhelming to bring it through town. And that's something I seldom ever hear that vote, and the only people that could vote were citizens of Nevada City. They had the voting record. We had the voting record in the city hall of the citizens of Nevada City, and so that was easy to obtain. Sammy Hooper was city clerk. Get a copy. The city hall was not involved in any way other than providing the registered voters of Nevada City. And I will say additionally that probably, I won't say who were some of the spearheaders of the ones that make it come through the town, but I think we had a vote of about 85% of the registered voters in that one day. And the votes were all counted immediately.
So, Beryl, what was the population of Nevada City at that time?
About 2,650.
Pretty close to what it is today.
Yeah, Nevada City, it kind of, down in that little basin, and the sewer and water lines and all of that are factors in its ability to grow. So it's only probably, this census will show it around maybe 3,250, 3,500. So at that time. So the vote was, we had around 1,600 votes in. So almost everybody voted. But they overwhelmingly voted, if you're going to have the thing, put it in the Nevada City. And so I think that's something, anytime I discuss, the vote was for it, you have to clarify. The vote, there wasn't a third one. Can we vote no freeway? As in today's world, no mine. Some people has word controversy of the mind. So there was a lot of changes made. The Division of Highways were pleased, and in the process of that, they did make some agreements with the city people, and one was we only really can live with just one off-ramp. And therefore, that saved Ott's Assay Office building, which today is where the chamber's at, and totally complete. That thing will be standing for years to come because the internal framing that took place in this rehabilitation of steel, etc. So that was saved, and one off-ramp, and it is down in the gulch. And they did plant it. And the Caltrans Division of Highways at that time, they lived up to it. And my parents would ultimately accept the offer shortly thereafter from the state. I think there was 2 offers additional money, not much. And I'm not going to indicate the amount of money. I've become the city manager at that time was making $700 a month. And I'm not city manager, I'm on the city council. So you think about that type of money and what they pay today, it was a totally different economics. But my parents did not get enough money to even buy any piece of property, just buy the property, let alone build a business.
What did they do after the business closed?
Well, I said they had become the petroleum agent for Richfield Oil, and that was the business that was out on South Auburn Street.
Okay.
So he was a distributor for them, and then they would ultimately, from my parents' point of view, they shut that the big stations, and that you see Arco in Glenbrook, and you see the station across the street from those take truck and trailer loads. My parents, the biggest truck he had carried 1,300 gallons of fuel. So those type of stations were on the way out, and the ones he had were all on the old route prior to the freeway. So with the freeway, etc., Richfield just announces to him that we're not going to. They shut down across the state. Richfield did all their petroleum. They had different times that they shut the distributors down. And frankly, what he ended up doing is went to work for Roy Toms in Colfax, and they both retired from Roy Toms in Colfax.
So you were a member of the city council as the freeway was getting completed.
Yes.
And I saw a picture of you at the ribbon cutting when that was opened.
That would be now I'm city manager.
You were city manager then?
I'm city manager on that, and bear in mind that as I've indicated, I become city manager. I was only on the council a little over a year. So in June of '65, I become city manager. And in the spring of '66, Norman Fidel, who was building, he was down to grade on this section. That means all the way down to Glenbrook and up through the cut and the tie-in, as we have today, the tie-in to 2049 to either end of the freeway. And he had built one structure, the Gold Flat overcrossing, and he went bankrupt. And at any rate, the freeway stops, and that was a total embarrassment to the Division of Highways, because here they are in Nevada City, the ones who had really, struggled to fight them, and now they don't know what to do. And what they did is they would hire the company that came in, and it took about 9 months. And that was the time that Nevada City was really in a world of hurt. Because think of the both bridges are still in, the old bridges, etc. But there's grade, there's all kinds of problems. There's mud, they're rocking different places. They've opened it up. They immediately come in, and so they would, Tykert, I think it was the Tykert, they're brought in on time and materials, but that was 9 months later. And that would take Tykert about 9 months to complete the freeway. So the freeway is completed in probably late, I think it was early '67.
Well, one of the controversial points in the project was this huge tree that stood out in front of Bergman's funeral home, and that perished.
Yeah, that was an issue, and the state did show and gave the city a plan that in order to have the off-ramp that was necessary coming into town today, the off-ramp to Broad Street, that they could build a retaining wall to hold the tree up, but they were not sure that it would hold it up, and they were not sure that the tree wouldn't fall, and therefore they wouldn't complete the off-ramp. And they said, you got to have an off-ramp into town. And the off-ramp on Sacramento Street is not sufficient to bring business to your town. And they made a very responsible determination in showing the city structurally the tree, if it was about 20 feet further away from the freeway, it probably could have been saved. But they said there was, what if you're the person that you're coming on the off-ramp that shouldn't have been put in and the tree falls on you? Yeah. And you had to agree with them. There are points at times that you just can't engineer around it. And the tree had to go, and that was a day that people came from everywhere to watch it being cut down. And a lot of the tree trunk, et cetera, was used for other things then. The tree was planted in 1865.
Yes, my wife was witness to that tree coming down. And that tree still lives on today in the form of benches at Malakoff Diggings. So
yes.
It didn't completely perish.
You didn't know.
So the freeway was very controversial in its origin. But there seems to be a great acceptance of it today. We all use it. And I can't imagine us without it. Can you?
No, I can't imagine without it, because one of the highest volumes of traffic just go through the Glenbrook area at any time. They would add more to the clover leaf down there because initially there wasn't as much of a clover leaf. They didn't. But as traffic and as the county blossomed with more people moving in, retirees, etc., no, you can't. Periodically, like we'll go over and eating in Grass Valley, Maria's across from the new post office there, and you think about the walls and how narrow, and that was the way the logs and the lumber trucks and everything, and the big buses and everything were going by before the freeway, or those big tankers of gasoline and etc. No, it's hard to imagine today without the freeway.
I've heard stories from people about the big lumber trucks lumbering down Broad Street, and I can't even imagine that. But
well, now Broad Street's a very wide street because prior to the freeway, you came up Broad, and then in front of the city hall, you turned on that little narrow street to head for Truckee. And then you went up just to Bennett Street, and you went down on what's called the old, and it's still there, the old highway on your way to North San Juan, etc. And the only reason I say it's so wide is because there was a street sign distance to Truckee on the City Hall building side of Broad Street, and it gave one figure. And across the street, there was another one with more information on going to Truckee and North San Juan, etc. And that one said that it was 1 mile shorter. So therefore, obviously, by crossing the street, it was a mile.
That's a very
I know there's got to be pictures. I don't have a picture of that. I may, but I'm not sure.
Interesting. Well, the freeway has a wonderful story. Beryl, I'm really glad you are here today to help put some of that story out here so we could hear it. We who were not here when it was being built, we just take it for granted. But you were here during the thick and thin of the fight to make the freeway occur. And so I just want to thank you for spending some time with us, Beryl. This is Talking With, and today we're talking with Beryl Robinson, a Nevada County native. And I'd like to just add on to that Beryl, can you just briefly tell us the very fast history of how many years were you the city manager?
Well, I was 37 years a city manager, and I loved the job. It was a great year, 37 years, and hopefully I did a good job. And I think
we were blessed to have you for all those years. The continuity of leadership can always be important. So again, thank you, Beryl, for being here and talking with us about the 49er Freeway. Thanks much.
All right. It's a pleasure, Gil. It's a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.